Today we're ranking every evolution in Clash Royale from worst to best. We finally no longer have Goblin Drill as the worst evolution in Clash Royale. The Goblin Giant is sitting here at the throne. I'll give him at 39. It's awful. It's awful. Goblin Giant, ever since he got 3 whopping nerfs, and that last meta was just Giant and Golem and Lava being the main beatdown units, Goblin Giant's just put on the shelf. He probably didn't need 3 different nerfs the last time we balanced him, but the Clash Royale team decides that instead of seeing broken cards and nerfing the broken cards to nerf a deck, we're just going to nerf the win condition. And yeah, he's dead now. Raw stats don't show the whole picture. Barbarians have better stats than a few of the cards on this list, but realistically, if a card is used in like 2 decks and that deck performs well, it kind of performs well regardless of how that Evo is doing, but it makes the Evo look better. That's exactly what's going on with the Barbs. Nobody in their right mind just sits down and says, hey, I want to put the Barbs Evo in my deck, because Barbs aren't even that good to begin with. And especially in metas where, you know, there's a lot of Ghost, there's a lot of Splash, there's no room for Barbarians. Ice Spirit is one of the like staples of cycle decks that just kind of stopped getting used as the Evo. There are so many different options now that when you think about putting an Evo in your deck, the Ice Spirit is no longer a guarantee. It used to be super high use rate because all of the cycle decks would be like, oh, I'm using Ice Spirit and there's not that many Evos in the game, so I'll use the Ice Spirit Evo. That's not the case anymore. There's 38 other really good Evos to pick with, and when you're playing Ghost Evo in so many different decks right now, you kind of just leave out the Ice Spirit, and that's, you know... The Ice Spirit also has a 45% win rate in all of Ultimate Champion in the last week. That is abysmally bad. Bats kind of fell out of the meta as minions got buffed, and I think I really like the minions buff. Honestly, I can see how they're a bit oppressive, and they were definitely broken. They've been toned down a little bit now, but you can see the minions are just a better, more consistent version of bats. So if minions are being used over bats, bats aren't even going to be used. Regardless, is their Evo going to be used? So bats aren't being used at all. Their Evo isn't being used at all. And when it does get used, it's all right, but you'd rather save an Evo slot and use a stronger card in the minions. Now, the Goblin Drill Evo did get better. It's no longer the worst Evo in the game because it has more goblins that spawn on the re-submerge, if that's the right word, of the second and third Goblin Drills. So now you're getting more goblins, getting a chance for more damage. However, it doesn't make the drill that good because, again, the same problem with the Ice Spirit. There's so many different Evos to pick. You're guaranteed to probably use Snowball with your Evo, or with your Goblin Drill decks, because it helps you more. And also, Cannon is just usually used in most drill decks and is way better than the Evo Drill. So even though the drill got buffed, it's still the odd man out. Now, P.E.K.K.A. is being like used as a card again. It's honestly not even used as an Evo that often. You have P.E.K.K.A. bridge spam decks with the addition of the Evo Ghost now having Battle Ram and Ghost in their decks, and P.E.K.K.A. is just kind of left out. And P.E.K.K.A. doesn't really, it's like, its heal is, you know, maybe if you're going up against beatdown, it'll heal. Against more thick units, it'll heal more impactfully. The majority of the time, you're going to heal like 5 HP against some, you know, mediocre mid-sized unit or some cheap unit. It's not worth using. Usually the value you'll get out of a P.E.K.K.A, Evo P.E.K.K.A, you'll get out of a normal P.E.K.K.A, and it's more impactful to use the other better evolutions. Bomber isn't awful, but again, it's another victim of the raw stats. Bomber's win percentage is like really high, and it's just kind of because it's used in like 1 or 2 decks, both of which are really good against mid-ladder players and for climbing. So obviously you're going to see win percentages like just... You can't base your whole thing off win percentages. Bomber is not really that impactful, isn't very versatile, and although does some cool things, is being propped up by the fact that its deck in Giant Prince is really good, and you don't have another Evo to play outside of the Bomber, so you just use the Bomber. Hunter is a decent Evo. The problem being that, again, with the Evo Ghost being, no spoiler, well, spoilers, the Evo Ghost, okay, no spoilers, but the Evo Ghost being better than the Hunter, the RG being better than the Hunter, you once again have, okay, this isn't a terrible Evo, but that being said, there are better options, clear better options to use, and so I'll use those instead of the Hunter. Doesn't make him horrible, but paired with not really having that much versatility, you'd rather just use the other Evos, and he gets left out again. Now, the Wizard is one of the first Evos on the list so far that doesn't have that issue where he's being used in decks with better Evos. He just sucks. Like, with the Wizard Evo, the shield is really nice. He gets kind of a pain in the ass to kill, but you also have to use the normal Wizard. So the Wizard Evo would be a lot lot better if you didn't have to use the normal wizard because he's awful and usually way too expensive for what he does most of the time. Although his Evo will do some cool things sometimes, again, you have to play with the normal wizard, so. Dark Goblin is pretty unique because although he does suffer the same, well, there's a lot of Evos that are like, I'd rather use something other than him. He is really good as a base card. There's almost no reason to not use his base card because he gets so much value, and because the Evo, while it's nice sometimes, is pretty niche, and you're better off sticking with maybe a Valk Evo and a Barrel Evo in your bait deck, or using a Ghost version of the deck. And so the Dark Goblin, he does the same thing he usually does, just get crazy amounts of value as a base card. He doesn't need his Evo, so that's why he's not one of the better Evos in the game. Next up are archers, and although they are pretty easy to take out, if you catch somebody by surprise or if you set up the right scenario, you are going to get a ton of value out of the Evo archers, and they're always a card that your opponent needs to be prepared for. The problem being, it's really easy to take them out, especially if your opponent's running arrows, or if you don't play them really, really well. You see them shine in Expo and pretty much nowhere else, unfortunately, because like the wizard, you got to use the normal archers, and unfortunately, wet paper towel shooting isn't the best form of damage. The Knight Evo is... let's just say he got phased out by the Ghost. There is only... well, this is wrong if you take advice from mid-ladder players. There's only usually room for one mini tank in your deck. One being, you could use hybrid, Mini P.E.K.K.A, Valkyrie, Knight, Dark Prince, Royal Ghost. So people are just starting to play the Royal Ghost because it's the most broken Evo in the game. Then are we gonna use the Knight? No. So maybe he's not that bad of an Evo, but the stats have notably declined, and that's just because the Ghost is better in every way. And the Knight, still a jack of all trades, still versatile, but come on, he can't compare to the Evo Ghost. And I promise now we are moving out of the, oh, he just says everything's based off the Evo Ghost. The Furnace Evo kind of got nerfed to the ground, and honestly, there hasn't been that big of a reason for him falling off. He just got nerfed like 4 times. So he got nerfed 4 times. The meta is kind of like not as baity anymore. You don't really need the Furnace. The normal broken Furnace isn't as broken as it once was. So the Furnace and the Evo Furnace getting significant nerfs just kind of knocked him down a lot. And he's also being replaced by other ranged units. So, if there's like stuff like the recently buffed Zappies, you don't really need this card. He doesn't do that much of a unique effect on your deck. So most people just aren't using the Furnace anymore. Now, the Goblin Barrel is a pretty solid, win condition sometimes. The problem is it's really easy to take out, and bait is not the greatest thing in the meta right now, which is kind of just, we could sit here and go for a while about why bait isn't the best thing in the meta. It's just not good in the meta, and obviously if your win condition isn't that good, you can't rank the win condition that high. You can still outplay people with bait, especially as you're climbing up the ranks, but as you get to top ladder, there's just more and more counters to it. It's honestly just not in the great spot right now, so Goblin Barrel, therefore, directly not in a great spot. Royal Recruits are a decent Evo that are really easy to use and have been ranked higher in the past. I mean, 25 is kind of low for Recruits, but Recruits are just not that great in the meta right now. You have a lot of Swarm. You have a lot like Swarm counters. You have a lot of splash cards in the meta. You have a lot of anti-recruit decks in the meta. And so, therefore, we aren't seeing very much Recruits in the meta, which is a little bit of a surprise given that we were like, oh, Evo Hoggies. That's kind of, and they're kind of not even being used. It's mainly Cajun Recruits that are used in that deck that you probably know what I'm talking about. You probably face Recruits if you're in like League, like the Grand Champion League a ton. But I mean, honestly, they're not that hard to deal with right now because most of the meta does counter them. And so, again, you won't see that many of them either. Recruits just kind of mid right now. Firecracker is a decently strong Evo. Her downside being she's really easy to take out, and she does hand out free King Tower activations. And Hog EQ is definitely still reeling from the nerf that it got to 3-card cycle, because it was a lot better before the nerf. And of course, this is situational. I've mentioned when playing the deck in a video that I think that the 3-card cycle being gone is good for like mid ladder and stuff, but for top ladder, cycling versus cycle deck, stuff like that, it gets a lot harder. Firecracker's just, she's never going to be one of the best evolutions of the game because of how easy she is to take out, and she gets decent value sometimes, so she's all right. Musketeer as a ranged card is just better than the Firecracker, gets more consistent value, is able to outplay easier and more because she's able to snipe things like without you having to worry. The only thing you have to worry about, I guess, is, you know, somebody blocking something. But she is easier to use against countering buildings, countering counters from across the arena, and she's pretty consistent. The one issue with her being that you kind of have to, like, you have to play her a certain way to get the Evo to work properly, and so sometimes you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to have to waste an Evo Musk, because you have to, usually when you're playing Evo Musk, you're going to have to cycle a lot of Musks as your main DPS card, which is why you see plays or decks like 2.6 not running Evo Musk, because they're oftentimes not going to be able to use her properly. Now, the Tesla Evo is, you know, not bad. It's a good solid building. We're getting into the range where, you know, we have to rank the Evos in order, and we're starting to get where all these Evos are, they're good, they're decent, just some are better than the others, and, you know, it being 22 doesn't make it bad. The Tesla Evo is just not as good as some of the other counterparts. It's a great building Evo, and honestly, I mean, there are probably better options to use in certain cycle decks, but you see plenty of Evo Tesla in Expo and Drill and things like that, and it can get a lot of value situationally, so not a bad Evo. I probably wouldn't buy it, but I mean, it's not a bad Evo. Now, Lumberjack is really good, but he's limited by the amount of decks he fits in, so obviously you're not going to see the versatility of another mini tank role like we've talked about. Not as good as the Knight, not as well, he's better than the Knight Evo, but usually when you're running mini tank, you go Valkyrie or mini P.E.K.K.A for damage, or you go Dark Prince for the shield, or you go, you know, different Ghost Evo, Golden Knight. Okay, we'll move on from blaming everything on the Ghost, but Lumberjack, he's good in beatdown decks, gets a ton of value, good in Lumberloon. You always have to worry about him. He's an extra thing you have to worry about, and he can get a lot of extra damage, kill some extra cards. Pretty decent Evo in select decks. The Mortar Evo has seen a bit of a comeback. It kind of like went from, this is one of the most broken things in the game, to, God, this is completely unusable, to now it's just, it's a decent Evo. It's decent. It's usable in the meta. It's not the worst thing ever. Mortar has seen better days, but Mortar is extremely viable right now. It's not one of the better decks in the game, but it's viable. You can win with it if you know what you're doing, and the Mortar Evo plays a big part in that. It transforms a card that does basically nothing to something that can end the game with just one lock on the tower. So Magonite is a solid card dealing with it's really good on defense. Doesn't do that much on offense, to be honest, but there are ways to do the same defense that you do with the Magonite Evo with other cards without having to commit to a whole 7 elixir Evo. So that's why he's not one of the best Evos in the game. Inferno Dragon is one of the better Evos in the game, and honestly, it has a really high I almost said skill ceiling. No, it just sits there. It has a really high ceiling in the fact that it can just completely win you the game. There are times, however, when iDrag is just going to go up against like bait decks and cycle decks, and it's going to get absolutely no value. And there are times, of course, when it can get to the tower, but other times when it just gets completely countered and it's like, dang, this is really a waste of an Evo. It did absolutely nothing. So really high ceiling and really, really low floor for the iDrag Evo, which is why it doesn't rank higher. We've got Diddy, baby, and the Diddy cage, honestly, pretty similar to the iDrag in the fact that not the skill ceiling again, but the value ceiling of the card is like way up there. It can get crazy amounts of value, like counter entire P.E.K.K.A, entire E-Giant, entire Golem. The floor is the floor, and the floor is doing absolutely nothing that the normal cage wouldn't do, especially now that they changed the final 2 Evos that had stat buffs, the Valk and the cage, to not have stat buffs anymore. So he's never going to do anything special, even if the cage doesn't do anything. So it depends on the deck and depends on the matchup, but it can't be higher than this just because there are matchups where the cage will do literally nothing. Evo Skellies are a pretty solid Evo that are they're definitely harder to use than most Evos in the game, but for 1 elixir, you have the potential to apply massive amounts of pressure, get crazy defensive value, and the problem being they're not just super easy to play. You can't just plop them down. You have to, you know, usually tank for them with something or wait for the right opportunity when your opponent doesn't have the right counter or spell in hand, and so it's a bit hard to get value out of them, but when they do, it's insane value usually, and you're always going to get more value than what you paid for, given they're only 1 elixir. I feel like Battle Ram may be ranked a little bit higher than it actually is, but statistically speaking, Battle Ram is one of the best Evos in Clash Royale, especially against these players as you're pushing up the Ultimate Champion, as you're pushing up to the Trophy Road. It's a solid Evo on top ladder as well, of course, in these P.E.K.K.A bridge spam decks, or honestly just bridge spam decks even without the P.E.K.K.A. The thing being, if you know what you're doing and you set up an Evo Battle Ram correctly, boom, you win the entire game. Like, The thing that the Evo Battle Ram adds to bridge spam decks is irreplaceable. Like, you're able to win matchups you have no business winning just off of the Evo Battle Ram and setting up a correct Evo Battle Ram positioning. So you cannot understate how much value this Evo gives you. Even if it's not used as much as other Evos that are below it on the tier list, it can win you the entire game straight up. Evo Snowball is honestly pretty solid. There's a lot of decks that really just can't fit a Snowball in it, which is why it's not ranked in the top 10. But Evo Snowball, especially with things like Drill, is so strong because you're able to just, not even on offense, strictly talk about the defensive value. You're going to bail yourself out of crazy defensive situations and just get immense, I tried to say amazing and immense at the same time, value out of this card that you definitely shouldn't be. Like, it's the definition of a bailout. You can get yourself out of a crazy defensive situation. You can get yourself some damage you probably don't have business getting. Really strong spell Evo. Next up is the E-Drag, one of the Electro Dragon's highest rankings lately. And this is kind of a little surprising, but the E-Drag is just really good in a select few decks like Golem, like E-Golem, Lumberloon. There's other decks like the Pong Guys Ram Rider deck where E-Drag is just really good in. And you'll see E-Drag just kind of being that really underrated Evo that I think you could argue will go lower on the list. And you probably have a fair argument for that. But its peak is just so easy to play. It's just so easy to play to counter beatdown decks. If beatdown's in the meta, E-Drag gets better. It's just such a broken fundamental concept where you just, things close to each other, things die. That's how it works. The only thing that can stop it is a lightning or a stun to reset the chain of the E-Drag. Really strong Evo. Again, you could probably argue it lower, but right now in the current beatdown meta and just type of decks that are in the meta, E-Drag gets crazy value, and also it's really good in Golem, which is really good. Next up is the Evo Witch, who's definitely seen a downturn, I think, but that's kind of just based on the meta. She's still a really strong evolution, good in very few decks right now. That's kind of the problem, but she's really hard to kill, especially with some of the decks that are being run in the meta right now. There's a lot of things that are just like, oh dang, this is kind of hard. I can't really kill the Witch. She just sits there and gets crazy amounts of value. Giant Graveyard seeing a bit of a comeback. Witch is just sitting there. She's kind of just waiting for the meta to settle, and then she's going to find her spot, but being a really hard Evo to kill, being pretty versatile for most of the ladder meta, in Trophy Road, in Ultimate Champion, whatever it may be, which really strong. Zap is a top 3 most used Evo in all of Clash Royale. I could be corrected. It might be 4. I forget, with a 13% use rate in all of Ultimate Champion. There's a reason for this. And I think there is a valid argument to say it's better than Snowball because of the double damage, the double stun, the ability to pair it with other spells. I say this is literally every ranking video. The ability to pair it with other spells to... That monitor keeps shutting off and it is pissing me off. Don't know what it is, but I probably... Oh, jiggle the cable. But Zap, you pair it with, you know, Fireball, you kill E-Drags. You pair it with Fireball, you kill Queens. You pair it with Fireball, you kill 3 Musketeers. You pair it with... you just by itself, it kills Dark Goblins, Firecrackers, minions. There's just so many things you could do with the Zap, and so many different decks that can run the Zap. Mainly beatdown decks, but also bridge spam decks and things like that. So you're always going to get value out of the Zap. It's never not going to get value, and it sometimes can change the entire course of the game. Skeleton Barrel Evo, really strong still, especially with bait decks, very certain bait decks being good in the meta. And I point to a specific Royal Ghost Rascals bait deck where Skeleton Barrel is just really strong. And Skelly Barrel has a few decks where it's really good in, but it's just that double impact damage, extra skeletons. You can't ignore this thing at all, and it does require you to be more careful and more well timed with the response to it. So a lot more can go wrong and a lot more can go right. As the user of the Skelly Barrel, it's oftentimes going to get crazy amounts of value for just 3 elixir. Now, Wall Breakers did get that nerf, but don't let that fool you. They are still an extremely strong Evo for only 2 elixir. How the hell do I counter these things? Don't even start, like, you can't do it for 2 elixir or less. You can't, like, counter them at all. Like, for most decks, you got to have a Spirit Log ready and well-timed, and a lot of the times when you're going up against Wall Breaker decks, you're not going to be able to have that luxury. So it is definitely difficult to counter the Wall Breakers and counter everything else in the deck at the same time. Maybe don't think of it as just straight up, oh, there's so many counters to Wall Breakers, but also, will I have those counters available when dealing with the Wall Breaker Evo deck that also has so many other spam cards or bait cards in it? The answer, usually no, and these things can also be used on defense. A little bit of personal bias mixed into this one, but not that much, okay? The Evo XC is a complete defensive, like, unit. This thing knocks things back. He does bonus damage. He will clog the entire lane up by himself and deals with insane like sizes of pushes, not even using NATO. But of course, XC decks usually have NATO in them because the synergy is just that good. And so you're going to be able to just playing correctly, not have any problems with any single push in the entire game. Evo X is going to get you out of crazy situations, and also on offense, all he needs to do is get a little bit close to the front of the bridge. With a NATO, with the lineup, he's going to be hitting that tower as well. So it's really hard to also counter him on offense, but he's getting that bonus damage and getting bonus interactions that he usually doesn't get, that usually throw the defender off. Now the Hoggies come in at number 7, and a big reason for this is they're really finicky interaction with buildings when they're in the air. So usually the building placement you'll play for the normal Royal Hogs does not work for the Evo Royal Hogs, and 2 or more of them will split and go directly to that tower. Not to mention they do have the impact damage, which is going to let them not only kill buildings easier, but if they get to the tower, deal more tower damage, and that can be just make or break what wins you the entire game with Hoggies decks, because you're not going to have that 3-card cycle benefit from a lot of the decks that Hoggies were the win con in. So you're going to have tons of success with the Evo Hoggies, and people are really underrating them. They're really strong, especially because of the reasons I mentioned, and although they're not the most flashy Evo of all time, they're very good. Royal Giant is having one of its best metas in a very long time. Last season was one of them. This continues this season, and Royal Giant is just, you know, maybe the Evo, flat out the Evo. If we were ranking the strength of every single Evo, regardless of the card, which I feel like is stupid to do, it doesn't really make sense. It wouldn't be that high up because all he does is stomp the ground, right? But he's crazy. He's crazy good in the meta right now, especially because, you know, the best Evo in the game, we're getting close to it, is a staple in the Royal Giant deck. His stomp will allow you to win entire games because if you think about it, there are, you know, Royal Giant games where the majority of them are played all the way out to overtime. They take 5 minutes. You win based off a little couple hundred damage or something like that, and you're going to be able to get bonus hits because of the Royal Giant knocking things off of him. All you need sometimes is that one Royal Giant hit to win you the game. He will do that with the Evo. He's really strong in the meta, makes him a top 6 Evo in the game. Now, Skeleton Army, I hope you haven't had to deal with this, and you might be like, what the hell is the Skelly Army doing at the top 5? I have seen, like, over time, I was a Skarmy doubter too, and then I saw that you can literally place this thing so it's like impossible to deal with the General Larry. You can just trap General Jerry, stuck for Allah, forgive me. He just sits behind things. It's impossible to kill him without committing both of your spells, and if you're not playing a deck with multiple splash units or multiple things, you're gonna have to deal with other stuff similar to the wall breakers while you're dealing with General Jerry. You can't kill General Jerry. You have infinite skeletons. It is so difficult to kill him in certain circumstances. I remember that word gives me PTSD. You're gonna have such a hard time dealing with this card in the majority of times. Sometimes you'll get lucky, or sometimes you have really good splash, or your opponent doesn't know how to play them. But if you're going against a good opponent with a lot of pressure, this card is a nightmare. Your favorite cannon glazer is here and back to put the cannon once again inside the top 4 because it's a really strong building used in almost every cycle deck. Can be used in other decks as well. Just gets crazy value because you can use a defensive building on offense. You can get knockback. You can play it normally on defense to kill things at the bridge. You can play it high up to kill things with your push. You can just get so much value out of a building that already gets a ton of value every time it's played. The barrage, extremely effective at clearing out areas, getting that knockback, getting extra bonus damage. Can bail you out of maybe being able to use a spell on offense instead of on defense. It's just a really strong Evo. At number 3, we have our Baby Dragon, which is still insanely strong in mainly beatdown decks. The Baby Dragon Evo not only has that insane speed buff, right, but also not even just talking about how strong the speed buff is and how much it can just win you games straight up. The slow field, it can bail you out of crazy defenses just based off the slow field. And although it did get that big nerf to make the cycle or the cycles 2 instead of 1, you are going to still get crazy value on both defense and offense every single time you play this card, unless you just straight up waste it. And even if you waste it, there's still an opportunity to get value with it on the offensive boost. I'm keeping the Valkyrie as a top 2 Evo in Clash Royale Royale. She is insanely strong on both offense and defense. The health buff, or the health nerf, was definitely impactful, but she's still going to be able to provide you so much value, especially against the current decks in the meta. Royal Giant, E-Giant, Lava, Golem, E-Golem, Bait, anything you name it is just really, really strong. And she also gets a buff by the fact that Royal Ghost is the best Evo in Clash Royale. And the best, one of the best counters to the Ghost Evo is the Valkyrie. Even just the straight up normal Valkyrie. And the versatility of the Valkyrie, she allows to be fit in so many different kinds of decks, including beatdown, cycle, control. So there's tons of versatility, tons of value, offensive and defensive. And she's the counter of the best Evo in the game. That's a pretty good, you know, resume for top 2. Unfortunately, my Royal Ghost prediction did not come true. I was hoping he wouldn't be one of the best cards the game has ever seen. He was, in fact. And he has become a lot more harder to deal with than I thought he was, using a whopping 25% usage rate with still plus than 50% win percentages, which is insane if you think about it, because the ghosts are beating the ghosts. So having still plus 50 is insane. Like, the Royal Ghost Evo, crazy pressure. He did get a pretty solid nerf, but still, until we see that he visibly gets worse, the Guardians do 50% less damage. They're still insanely broken. Defensive value, offensive value, pressure, extremely easy to cycle. It's very easy to lose track of him too in the midst of defending everything else in the deck, and all he has to do is get onto the tower once and you're gonna lose because of a chip damage game in a lot of circumstances. Really, really strong Evo. The nerf was definitely good. I think we probably need to see him take a little bit more time to come into stealth mode if we want to nerf the card, but other than that, the Royal Ghost just extremely strong, and that makes our list for the best Evos in Clash Royale.